Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. This is Dave with Blue Bears Games, and today's video is going to be of Blues Brews. What are we brewing today? Today is Alela, the Artful Provocateur Commander. So, this is one of the decks that I had to split off from the Oloro deck. There was too much stuff to go into Oloro, so I decided to go ahead and, since it was the same colors, go with Alela. And we're going to go ahead and show you what I did so far. Now, keep in mind, this deck is not 110% complete. There are some cards from the mystery booster boxes I had not pulled from the 3 boxes I opened. So I'm now relegated to trading, and in a world full of the coronavirus, it's not so easy to acquire these cards. So I'm talking to some friends, see if they have them. A couple of them do. I'll explain to you which cards I will be trading out when I acquire them. So it's going to be a little bit of work to get this one completed, but for the most part, this is a full and complete deck, and I will be testing it as soon as, I get a chance to, or any of us get a chance to. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So, Alela, her ability is, well, let's go through this. Her casting cost is black, blue, white, and 1 of any. She's a 2/3 flying, life-linking Death Toucher. Her other ability is whenever you cast an artifact or an enchantment spell, create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying. So she has a built-in defense, but we're going to show you how I built her. There are many ways to build Alela. You can do pure artifact, you can do enchantment, you can do a mixture of both, you can do stacks. There's a whole lot of ways you can build Alela. I went for a little different route. I went mostly enchantment with a little bit of artifact help. So hopefully it works. We'll see sometime in the near future. So that's Alela. So we're going to start off with the lands. Lands are pretty simple. 3-color deck means that it has to be, mostly non-basics, but we'll go over all that right now. So always start with the command tower. The only time I don't really use a command tower is when it's a monocolor deck. So specifically in 3-color decks, I kind of wanted to go with the 3 colors. Arcane Sanctum comes into play tapped and adds 1 of the 3 colors for the deck. It's a no-brainer for that one. And I also went with the Dremar's Cavern. It's essentially the same thing as the Arcane Sanctum, however, it doesn't come into play tapped, but you have to return a land to your hand. It does not have to be a tapped land. So, with that being said, you can tap the land and then return it to play this. So, I'll read it to you. It's a lair, in addition to its other types. When it comes into play, sacrifice it. Unless you return a non-lair you control to its owner's hand. It's the only lair in the deck, so it's not really going to matter. And it taps to add 1 of the 3 colors of the deck. So, no-brainer for me. And you'll have to excuse me, I am a little sick today. It is, from what I can tell, not the coronavirus, but it is the flu. Or not the flu, but at least a head cold. Alright, so we start off with the duels. Now, I do have an Underground Sea extra I can put in here. But I felt kind of bad considering that I don't have the other 2, and it's kind of stupid to be, uneven on the amounts. Sure, it's great to put in an Underground Sea when you have it, but there's better options as far as decks I can put it in. So this one didn't get that treatment. It's not as expensive as the Oloro deck because that's the main deck I try to use. So first up, Watery Grave, basically a shock land for blue-black. Drowned Catacomb, hopefully with, the combinations that I have here to go grab some lands, it comes into play untapped. I found a new love for the, I guess they're called Tangle lands. I really am cringing when it comes to that name. But it's Sunken Hollow. It's considered an island swamp. Comes into play tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. I did go out and purchase a couple of cards right before the pandemic hit. One of them was River of Tears. River of Tears is an interesting card. It originally came out during when they were testing out things that they wanted to make for later. It is tap to add a blue to mana pool. However, if you played a land this turn, you can tap to add a black instead. Polluted Delta, always get a fetch land in 3-color decks. This is the blue-black fetch land. Hallowed Fountain is the white-blue pain land. Shock land. Glacial Fortress, the check land for blue-white. Prairie Stream, the Tango land for blue-white. Nimbus Maze is another one of those special lands that they created that they were looking into for later. It taps to add a colorless, or you can tap it to add a white and activate it if you control an island, or you can tap to add a blue if you control planes. So I went ahead and did that as well. Flooded Strand is the blue-white fetch land. Godless Shrine is the black-white shock land. Isolated Chapel is the black-white check land. Excuse me. Hall of Heliod's Generosity. Now, there are two versions of this card. When I say versions, I don't mean functional reprints or anything that does exactly the same thing, but there is this, which taps to add a colorless, or for a white and one of any, return target enchantment card from your graveyard to your to the top of your library. There is a artifact version like this as well. I did not put that in here, even though I should have. And the reason for that is I do have plans for another deck that's going to be strictly artifacts that I wanted to use it with. Strip Mine, add a colorless or tap it, sacrifice it, and destroy a land. You always have to have some kind of way to get rid of a land. Vault of the Archangel, adds a colorless, or for 2, a white and a black, creatures you control get death touch and lifelink, and the reason for that was more defensive and for life gaining purposes in case, I get a little low on health. Inventor's Fair is a legendary land. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more artifacts, you gain a life. There aren't that many artifacts here, but there's enough. Some of the stuff is colored artifacts, so I figured it's a life gain as well. It adds a colorless mana to your mana pool when you tap it, or you can pay 4, tap it, sacrifice it. And search your library for an artifact card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle your library. I can only activate that if I control 3 or more artifacts. There are a couple of combos in here that require some artifacts, so it's good to be able to go get them. Alright, and then the basics. I have as many special foil lands as I could get as far as the basics. So islands, obviously I put 5 of each. 5 swamps. And 5 plains, just all foil because I like foil lands. So that's the land section. It's a total of 34 lands. It's a little low, but there's a reason for that. I'm going to get into that now. Here is my quote-unquote ramp, or my mana rocks and other things that help you get there. Realize that this deck relies on casting artifacts and casting enchantments, so I wanted to put in here as much of the being able to cast things to get the 1/1 as I could. So that's why some of the choices were made. Some of the other choices I will show you that I'm going to change once I acquire the cards I tell you, but let me get into that later. So we start off with the Mox Opal. There's enough artifacts in here that the Metal Craft should go off rather quickly, so you can tap it for the mana. I don't like the fact that I can't tap it right away for mana. It's not really ramp per se, it's just a mana rock, but it, the way that this deck should play out, it should be able to tap almost immediately. Mox Diamond. If Mox Diamond would enter the battlefield, you may discard a land card instead, and if you do, it comes down to the battlefield. If you don't sacrifice it, blah, blah, blah. And both of these add a color, 1 mana of any color, so that's why they were chosen, other than the fact that they're also 0 to cast artifacts, because if I can find a way to keep bouncing them, I can keep playing them. I'm still looking for the card that will go in here for that. I haven't gotten to that yet. I know there's a way to do it. I have other ways to do it, but not infinitely, so I'm looking for that. Obviously, a Soul Ring goes in probably just about every Commander deck. If you don't know what it is, you need to figure it out. Land Tax, enchantment that goes and grabs land. It's a little bit of ramp. It's going to play into Alela's ability, so if you don't know what it is, it says at the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent controls more land than you, you may search your library for up to 3 basic lands, reveal them, and put them to your hand, and then shuffle your library. So it's all around good for grabbing lands when you need them. Arcane Signet, 3-color deck. Always put Arcane Signets in anything. I don't do them in 1 and 2 color decks. I put them in 3 and above. It adds a mana of any color to your add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity, so it gives me the colors I need. This may come out in the near future, depending. I did pull a Thought Vessel, and it may get replaced with this, but this is actually not horrible. It depends. The amount of lands that I pull, I'm going to test it and see how many lands I start pulling if I do pull land tax. This is a 3 to cast 2/2 that you pay 3, sacrifice it, and search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, and put them on the battlefield tapped. That's the only advantage it has over land taxes, it puts them into play. Again, 3-color deck, so Chromatic Lantern, I always put them in. 3 to cast artifact that taps to add a mana of any color, and then also this, your lands tap for any color you want as well. Midnight Clock was actually put in here not for ramping purposes, but I realized, oh yeah, it also taps for mana. 3 to cast artifact, and that's why I chose it. It's an artifact. Taps to add a blue, but then also you can pay 3 and put an hour counter on it, and what that does is at the begin, or I'm sorry, in addition to that, at the beginning of your upkeep, you can put an hour counter on it as well. And then when the 12th hour counter is put on it, you can shuffle your hand and your graveyard into your library, draw 7 cards, and then exile it. So early game, it's good for ramp. Mid to late game, you can actually refill your hand if it's getting low. Alright, Solemn Simulacrum or Sadbot. 4 to cast 2/2. When he enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land, put it into battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. And when he dies, draw a card. Again, I'm looking for more ways to start bouncing things to recast them. That would go great with him as well. And again, what I always do for 3-color decks is put a Gilded Lotus in. It's a 5 to cast artifact that adds 3. You can tap it to add 3 mana of any color to your mana pool. So that is the ramp, so to speak, I guess you could say. It's my mana rocks, my ramp, whatever have you. And next, so one of the things that I had a problem with is card draw. Even though we're in blue, casting instants and sorceries in a deck like Alela doesn't really help you as much as it does in, say, a Kakar or, Talrand. So I needed to find ways to draw cards through artifacts and enchantments, and I think I've gotten as much as I can out of this. There are some options that I didn't have, so I didn't put them in here, but we'll start with what I got. Skull Clamp, 1 to cast artifact. You equip it to a creature and it gets +1/-1. And when that creature dies, you can draw 2 cards, and the equip cost is 1. So if you're creating 1/1s, you cast it. If Alela is out, you get a 1/1, equip it, you can draw 2 cards. It's just a cycle of things like that. Mystic Remora is a 1 to cast enchantment. Again, another enchantment. Cumulative upkeep of 1, and I have a little secret for the cumulative upkeeps for everything I have in here. And then whenever target opponent successfully casts a non-creature spell, you may draw a card, but that player may pay 4 to counter this effect, and 4 is a lot to pay in Commander. So you're most likely going to draw a card. Witching Well, another artifact that's blue. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2, and then you can pay 4 and sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. Again, looking for ways to draw cards without it being an instant or sorcery. Same thing with Omen of the Sea. This one's 2 to cast with flash, so you can do it at the end of the opponent before you use turn. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2, then draw a card, and then you can pay 3 to sacrifice it to scry 2 again. Search for Azganta is 2 to cast legendary enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library, and you may put it into your graveyard. Then, if you have 7 cards in your graveyard, you may transform Search for Azganta. Now, the reason why I chose this, I actually was taking it out of it at first, and I put it back in here, because when you can flip it, Search for Azganta turns into Azganta the Sunken Ruin. It taps to add a blue to your mana pool, or you can pay 3. Look at the top 4 cards of your library and reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them, put it in your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your library. Now, for a deck like this with Alela, because you're doing enchantments and artifacts, it's a non-creature, non-land, so you can actually draw into something that you need as an answer. So I went with that. At first, I didn't like the card because I was like, it's not really going to do what I need because I thought it was for instants and sorceries. But for a deck like this where it's artifacts and enchantments, it works just the same. Everybody's favorite card to hate, Ristic Study. Everybody hates to say, do you pay the 1? But guess what? It works. It's a great card for Commander. I don't care if it's annoying. I got another annoying card in here, and you'll see that later. It's just as annoying. 3 to cast enchantment. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1. Yes, I'll be asking many, many times. This one's one of those ones where if I find a better option, I'll take this out. A Verity Circle. I like what it does, and then I thought the activated ability cost was cheaper than it was. I didn't see that it was a 4. I thought it was a 1. It's 3 to cast enchantment, so again plays into Alela. Whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it's not being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card, and for 5, I thought it was for 2, it would have been great. It's for 1 blue and 4 of any, tap target creature without flying. It's good against green, who uses a lot of mana dorks. You can draw a lot of cards with it, or you can force the tap. Erebos, God of the Dead, naturally has to go into every deck I play that has black, just because it's black's way of drawing cards. It's indestructible, it's a 5/7 creature if you need it to be. In this deck, it probably, it depends. I might be able to make it a creature if I need it to be. I don't want it to be. I want it to be as hard to kill as possible. And then each opponent can't gain life. That's always a bonus, especially when you're trying to kill people with 1/1 going wide. I have a plan for that as well. And then for 2 and 2 life, you can draw a card. So again, more card draw. It's a legendary enchantment, so when you cast him, you get to put a 1/1 out. Another legendary enchantment. This one's actually a legendary enchantment artifact. For 4, it's Bident of Thassa. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. And for 2 and tap it, creatures your opponents control attack this turn if able. It helps, basically, it makes it so that I kind of can stop the mana dorks if I don't have Verity Circle out by making them attack into things so they have to die. So everything in here is an enchantment or an artifact, and in some way helps me draw. It was the only way I could make it so that Alela worked as far as her abilities for what I wanted to do without it being sorceries or an instance. Alright, with that being said, we're going into the defensive part of the deck. This is what's going to help keep you live. Every blue deck in all of Commander plays Cyclonic Rifts. I had like 6 of them, luckily, from way back in the day. So there's no concessions on that. I play it, I use it, I love it. It's 2 to cast instant that return a target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, and obviously Overload is what everybody wants with this, which is return all non-land permanents you don't control to their owner's hand. So everybody who plays blue plays that. Alright. Controversial decisions I had to make for defense. Frogify, and I do have another one in here that does the same thing as Frogify for the most part. I may change it out. I think I have a Darksteel mutation that can go in here as well that does almost the same thing, but I'll explain why it's a little bit different. So, 2 to cast enchantment, plays into Alela, enchant a creature, and that creature loses all abilities and is a blue frog with base power and toughness 1/1. So, with losing all abilities, it helps take away a lot of trickery that people are going to play. It takes away a lot of other things, and it makes it a 1/1, so it's easier to get rid of. The Elder spell for defense for Planeswalker or Super Friends decks. 2 black, sorcery, destroy any number of target Planeswalkers, then choose a Planeswalker you control and put 2 loyalty counters on it for each Planeswalker destroyed this way. For me, any deck that I have that has black in it is pretty much a staple from here on out. Found this in my collection, and I was super happy to find it. I actually like this card a lot. It's Ether Barrier. 3 to cast enchantment whenever a player plays a creature spell, and this has been changed to cast from the rulings, the way that they word everything now. It's whenever a player casts a creature spell, that player sacrifices a permanent unless they pay 1. So more taxing. There's a couple of cards in here that tax for things being done. So this is another one of them. I really found this one to be good. It makes you either pay more for your creatures, or you sacrifice something that you have in play. So I like that card a lot. I wish I had more. I only had the one. This is the card that I might take out for Darksteel Mutation. I haven't figured out what I want to do yet. Same as Frogify. It's a 3 to cast enchantment. Enchant a creature, a land, or a Planeswalker. The reason why I like Imprison in the Moon is because it can take out a Planeswalker as well. Enchanted Permanent is a colorless land with tap to add a colorless to your mana pool and loses all other card types and abilities. It helps take care of problematic lands. It helps take care of problematic Planeswalkers. It's a pretty good card for Commander. Ghostly Prison, 3 to cast. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature they control that's attacking you. Good for defense. Aura of Silence, pulled from the, if you can't tell the symbol, I pulled from a Mystery Boosters. I was hoping I would pull it. I've only pulled 1 out of 3 boxes for an uncommon. It is ridiculous. 3 to cast, enchantment. Again, plays into Alela. Artifact and enchantment spells your opponent's cast cost 2 more to cast, more taxing. And then I can sacrifice it to destroy target artifact or enchantment, so it's kind of like a disenchant on top of a taxer. Grasp of Fate, again, the symbol there, it was another mystery booster box pull. I only pulled 1. 3 to cast enchantment again. When Grasp of Fate enters the battlefield, for each opponent, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls until it leaves the battlefield. Helps get rid of pesky things that are indestructible. So that's the whole point of that. More defense is Wrath of God. I'm playing white. Why wouldn't I? Destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated in case the board gets flooded. That's not my own creatures. Or if I haven't set up my own board state yet, it's to help defend against that. Phyrexian Scriptures, one of those cards that may come out when I finally get the other cards I'm looking for. One of the cards I'm looking for specifically is Phyrexian Arena, because I need more card draw, and I really like what it does. It's an enchantment, it's cheap, you draw a card each turn during your upkeep, even though you lose a life. That's why I needed a life gain in here. But what Phyrexian Scriptures does is 4 to cast for a Saga. First thing it does is put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature, and it becomes an artifact in addition to its other types. The second part is destroy all non-artifact creatures. Obviously, you would put that on your commander. And then part 3 is pretty good for Graveyard Hate, which is exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. So it does a lot of things you want it to do. Kaya's Wrath. I might actually bring down the creature sweepers. A couple, maybe 1 or 2. But I put in there, I think it's 7 total, even though I don't think I need that many. This is 2 black, 2 white, destroy all creatures. You gain life equal to the number of creatures you controlled that were destroyed this way. This is the one that I would take out. And then Phyrexian Scriptures is the other one for a Phyrexian Arena. And I would like to get an attrition and a black market for this deck. Just because with all the creature sweepers, black market I think could be good. Attrition is a good way to replace sweepers with targeted removal, even though it's non-black creatures, so this is not targeted. Supreme Verdict, 2 white, 1 of any, and a blue. It can't be countered and destroy all creatures. Again, more sweepers. Cleansing Nova is a little bit different than Creature Sweeper. It has other things it can do. 5 to choose 1, destroy all creatures or all artifacts and enchantments. I don't really want to use the second part of this. However, if my board state is really weak or I don't have my setup yet, I would use it if somebody else is strong. Or against, if somebody's playing Alela against me for the mirror and they have their board set up and I don't. Norn's Annex. Another defensive card for being attacked. It's 2 Phyrexian white, which can be paid with either 2 life or a white. Creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays a Phyrexian white for each of those creatures. There's only 1 planeswalker in this deck. This is more suited to my Oloro deck than it is this deck, but I needed some defense in here, so this went in. I believe I did pull, I may pull this out, and I may put in, what's the name of the card? The blue one that's just like Ghostly Prison if I didn't do it already. I don't think I did. Propaganda. I might put Propaganda in instead of this because it's cheaper to cast, but it does what I needed to do. It also helps that it can be paid in life, and people don't really want to pay life when they don't have to, so. Fumigate, again, another card that may come out. It depends. 5 to cast, destroy creatures, and you gain a life for each creature destroyed this way. I have it in there because it's defensive, and it helps me gain life in case I'm using too much of it for other things. And Time Wipe, again, like I said, a couple of these are coming out. 2 white, 1 blue, 2 of any. Return a creature you control to its owner's hand, and then destroy all creatures. So a lot of defense, a lot of creature sweepers. I'm not too sold on all of them. I just wanted to check them out and see which ones work best before I take any out. And again, I'm looking for a couple of things. Black Market, Attrition, and Phyrexian Arena. Those are things that I would replace them with because they're enchantments. They play into Alela, and they help me do things I want to do just like they do. Alright, so the next section I'm going to go over is just good stuff to go into the deck. Helps Alela do what she does, helps me stay alive. you know, just random stuff that I needed to put in here to help the deck function. I put Elixir of Immortality in a lot of decks just because it's a cheap to cast artifact. It plays into Alela for this version. It's one to cast, and you can gain life and shuffle it and your library and graveyard together, so that anything you've lost during the course of the game, you get back along with some life. So I put that in there. Authority of the Consuls is one of the cards that may come out when I get some of the other stuff. It's one to cast enchantment, and it says creatures your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped. And whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you gain a life. So again, more life gain. Enlightened Tutor had to go in here. I'm actually going to change this version out for the foil one I have, because I have 3 of them, and I don't know why I put a white border one in there. It's one to cast instant. Search your library for an artifact or enchantment. Reveal a card, put it on top of your library. If I had a Sensei's Divining Top, it would be going in here immediately and replacing probably Authority of the Consuls for stuff like Enlightened Tutored. But I didn't have an extra one. I only have one. I wish I had more. Bloodchief Ascension will be coming out. I put it in here as a placeholder. For now, I want to actually test it and see if it works out well in this deck. I don't think it will. It's not like Oloro. It's not. It's a good card to have in Commander in general, but it's not really going to do what I want it to do. It's 1 black. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, put a quest counter on it, and then whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, that could be milled, it could die, you know, it could be from their own spells. You know, black likes to put things in the graveyard from the library. It could be any of that. They lose 2 life and you gain 2 life if there are 3 or more quest counters on it. The next 2 cards are essentially the same, and I may bring it down to 1. Swift Foot Boots, 2 to cast equipment. The equip cost is 1, and the creature gains haste and hexproof. And then I chose Lightning Greaves as well. I don't know if I like having 2 of them in a deck. I think I put them in there because they're both artifacts and plays well into Alela, and I wanted redundancy. It's 2 to cast with equip of 0, and the equipped creature will have haste and shroud instead. Alright, so I also put in a couple of things that make tokens as well on top of Alela, so that this one makes bigger tokens, and plus I'm playing white, so who doesn't play Luminarch Ascension when you're playing white, where enchantments matter? 2 to cast enchantment at the beginning of each opponent's end step. If you didn't lose life this turn, put a quest counter on it. For 2, 1 white, 1 of any, put a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying onto the battlefield. Activate this ability only if there are 4 or more quest counters on it. Demonic Tutor, I pulled one from one of my Masters boxes, not the mystery box, unfortunately. Search your library for a card, put in your hand. Obviously, it's one of the best cards that black can play when it comes to that. More token generation. Bitter Blossom had to go in here. It does everything I wanted to do. It creates a fairy. It's a fairy tribal enchantment itself. It creates a 1/1 when it comes into play with a layout, and then at the beginning of my upkeep, you lose a life, and you create a 1/1 black fairy rogue creature token with flying. Again, does a lot. It's an enchantment for Alela. It creates tokens. Alela makes all flying creatures +1/+0. It's just a no-brainer. A new card that I've learned that I love. Didn't realize I was going to love it as much as I do. Once I read it, I was like, this is perfect. It's a Mirage Mirror. 3 to cast, artifact. For 2, Mirage Mirror becomes a copy of target artifact, creature, enchantment, or land until end of turn. Now, the good thing about this, it does not only count your own. You can make it any. So if somebody's got something pesky on the board and you wish you had it, Mirage Mirror becomes it for the most part. I don't see anything, other than Planeswalkers, it can't become. Thassa, God of the Sea, again, legendary enchantment, so it counts for Alela. 3 to cast for a 5/5, indestructible. It's not a creature unless your devotion is 5 or more to blue. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1, so it helps me channel through my deck and dig through it the way I want to. And then for 2, target creature you control can't be blocked, so Alela can make big hits if you need to. I did not go with a Voltron build for Alela. I probably could have if I needed to. Thassa would make more sense in there. However, she does a lot of things I like for her to do. She's an enchantment. She's indestructible. She lets me scry and dig through my deck, and then she can make something if I needed to hit with Biden the Thassa out to draw a card, I can do that as well. So, now, there is another version of this card for enchantments that I'm trying to get my hands on. It's Skywing Chimera or something like that. This is one of the ways I'm returning stuff back to my hand to recast. The Moxes are 1, anything that's cheap. So it's a 3 to cast, 4/3. I really like that it's cheap. It's an artifact itself. It has flying, so she becomes a 5/3 with Alela out. She puts a 1/1 into play when cast if Alela is out. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, you can return an artifact you control to its owner's hand. And the Skywing Chimera, I believe it's called, is the enchantment version of this. It's an enchantment creature. It's a 4/3 flyer and returns an enchantment to your hand. I don't have one. I don't know how. Or if I do, I haven't found it yet. I want to put that in there so that I can return things to my hand to recast them. And it's just a nice big creature. So, and this one's foiled too. I thought it was nice. I actually have always liked Esperzoa, so it was natural for me to put in there. Mirror Maid, 3 to cast enchantment. Again, another enchantment. It enters the battlefield as a copy of any artifact or enchantment on the battlefield, so you can make it something that you need that could be helpful in certain situations, and it also provides you redundancy that's hard to get in Commander because you can only have 1 of each card. I do have a copy artifact somewhere in my stuff. I gotta find it. It will probably go in here as well. I wanted Mirror Maid more than copy artifact. I wish I had copy enchantment. To be honest with you, I don't have a version of it. This is the only one I have because this is mostly enchantments. But there are a lot of artifacts that I have in here. Anointed Procession, 4 to cast enchantment. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice as many. So every time you cast something with a Alela out, you get 2 1/1s. No brainer. It's kind of like doubling. Well, not really doubling season. Doubling season does more. I think it's Parallel Lives. It's more like Phyrexian Metamorph, 4 to cast, 0/0. It's an artifact itself. Phyrexian blue and 3. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any artifact or enchantment. Again, it's kind of like Mirror Maid, only it's a creature itself when it starts, but then it can become something else. It's an artifact in addition to its other types, so when you cast it, you get the 1/1, you get to copy something. All is good. And I believe it's any, of any on the battlefield, so it's not even your own. So if there's something out there even better than what I have out, it becomes that. Leyline of Anticipation, 4 to cast, and the reason for this is I did take out some artifacts that mattered if you do something not on your turn. But I found things that were better than that. So Leyline of Anticipation was for that, but it's also good to be able to do this. It's if it's in your opening hand, you may just start the game with it on the battlefield. And then you may cast spells as though they had flash. It's always nice to be able to play stuff on your opponent's turn. So you can flash in something that'd be helpful, and if you have a Alela out, again, she can be flashed in as well. You get to put a 1/1 in play as well. The only Planeswalker I have in the deck is Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas. 4 to cast, so 1 black, 1 blue, 2 of any. For the first ability, +1, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact card from among them and put it into your hand, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. There's enough artifacts to make it worth it. Target artifact becomes a 5/5 artifact creature. I'm not really sure I'm going to use that, but the ultimate is where I really want to be at. Target player loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of artifacts you control. I'll explain why this is going to be good in a minute. When I get into the combo section, you'll understand. Heliod, God of the Sun, again, an enchantment. Indestructible. As long as your devotion to white is less than 5, it's just the enchantment. It's a 5/6, and for 4, I can put a 2/1 white cleric enchantment creature token onto the battlefield. If Alela only said when an artifact or enchantment enters the battlefield, this would be even more broken, but it doesn't. It says cast, so it doesn't matter. It's to make the tokens. Archon of the Sun's Grace, I just added yesterday. 4 to cast for a 3/4 flying lifelinker, so again, more lifelink. Pegasus creatures you control have lifelink, but the constellation is where I wanted it to be. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white Pegasus creature token with flying. It also will have, with the Archon out, lifelink, and then with Alela out, it'll get +1/+0, so not bad. Now, the reason for all of the token creation is because if I have Divine Visitation out, 5 to cast enchantment, if one or more creature tokens would be created under your control, that many 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance are created instead. Vigilance is important. Flying is really important because with Alela out there 5/4s, and I'm trying to create a lot of tokens with Alela, with Luminarch Ascension, with the Arcan. Instead of 2/2s, there are 4/4s with vigilance. I am missing a card. Sigil of the Empty Throne says whenever you cast an enchantment, create a 4/4 angel creature token with flying and vigilance. I can't find it. It will go in there if I find it. And then Safara. The reason for all the copying that I like is because Safara Sky's Blade, if you do get her into play, you do have her out. She does what I really like. She's a 7/7 flying lifelinker, so again, more life gain. You may pay 1 white and tap 4 untapped creatures you control with flying rather than pay the cost. But other creatures you control with flying have indestructible. So if I can copy her, that means she also gives herself indestructible from the second copy. All my flyers are indestructible. They're huge. They get bigger. It does what I want it to do. She doesn't do anything for Alela as far as casting an enchantment or artifact, but she helps because all the tokens are flying. And the last part of the deck is my combos, infinite or not. Okay? I said earlier, Tezzeret worked great with Smothering Tithe. 4 to cast enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they either pay 2 or you create a colorless treasure token. They're artifacts. Tezzeret's out. You have a bunch of tokens out that are artifacts. It can hurt. So that's why Tezzeret's in here with that. On top of that, this is a win con. I put Smothering Tithe in with Revel in the Riches. Originally, this was in Oloro. I took it out to make Alela because I thought it would be a better fit. 5 to cast enchantment. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that's why I have a lot of the creature sweepers, a lot of the destruction of creatures. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create a colorless artifact token. Those tokens can tap to sacrifice and add 1 mana of any color, so basically they're lotus petals. But at the beginning of your upkeep, and the reason why I have the flash stuff in here is because I want to try to get this into play on my opponent's turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. Simple as that, just the combo. Between Smothering Tithe and Revel in the Riches, it can be a winner. It's also foil, just because I could. Next combo, Solemnity. I said earlier about the cumulative upkeeps. Solemnity prevents cumulative upkeep from actually going up, and I'll explain. They changed cumulative upkeep to be put an ice counter on it and then pay the upkeep cost. This prevents it from going on there because it says players can't get counters. Counters cannot be put on artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or lands. So anything with cumulative upkeep stops having to be like ticked up. So if you have this in play first and then play something with cumulative upkeep, it never gets a counter unless this leaves play. So you don't ever have to pay the upkeep cost. It's 3 to cast for an enchantment, and it's part of the next part of the combo, which is Decree of Silence. It's 8 to cast, so yes, it's expensive, but I'm hoping that with treasure tokens and all this stuff, it can be doable. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, counter that spell, and put a depletion counter on Decree of Silence, and if there are 3 or more depletion counters on it, sacrifice it. You can cycle it for 6, and when you cycle it, you may counter a spell. The 2 go together well because with Decree of Annihilation out, they can't cast anything. If Solemnity is out, you don't put a counter on it. They never can cast anything. Everything gets countered. So that's combo number 2. Combo number 3 is a more recent one. Everybody talked about when Theros Beyond Death was released is Walking Ballista and Heliod Sun Crowned. The combo is as follows. Walking Ballista is double X, which means for every 2 you put into it, it has 1 for the X. It enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters. For 4, you can put a +1/+1 counter on it, and you can remove a +1/+1 counter from it to deal 1 damage to any target, creature, or player. And Heliod is 3 to cast, 5/5 indestructible god. It's also an enchantment. Walking Ballista is an artifact, so again it plays into Alela. Whenever you gain life, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or enchantment you control, and then you can pay 2, and other target creature gains lifelink until the end of turn. So, what you do is, you play this for at least 2, so you have to pay 4 mana to put it into play. Remove a counter from it. First thing you do is give it lifelink. You remove a counter to put a +1/+1 counter to do a damage, and then with the lifelink, you gain a life. You put a +1/+1 counter back on it, and you repeat the process over and over. It's infinite combo win. So you can deal infinite damage, put infinite +1/+1 counters on it, and so forth. So that's infinite combo and win con number 3. And the final part of this is a more recent one that I looked at and said I can do that. Time Sieve, Mirrored and Besieged, Thopter Assembly. Let me explain. Time Sieve is 2 to cast for an artifact. Sacrifice 5 artifacts, take an extra turn after this one. Part 1. Mirrored and Besieged. Whenever you would pick Mirren, whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature token. And then Thopter Assembly, 6 to cast for a 5/5 flyer. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control no Thopters other than Thopter Assembly, return it to its owner's hand, and then create basically 5/1/1 Thopters with flying. So, how this works is, you have this in play, or these 2 in play, and this, if you can flash it in, it would be great at the end of your opponent's turn. If you can't, you hope it lives for a turn after you've cast it. At your upkeep, it returns to your hand. Okay? Creates 5/1/1s. Then you tap this to sacrifice the 5 artifacts. Take an extra turn. Next turn, or I'm sorry, not next turn. Same turn, cast Thopter Assembly again. You get a 1/1, so you have an extra turn, so you go again. Next turn, this comes back to your hand. You create 5 more 1/1s. Sacrifice them. Tap Time Sieve. Take another turn. And it keeps going back and forth to where you can have infinite 1/1s. And, worst case scenario, if you have Alela out, you're actually getting an additional 1/1. If you have other things in play that make them bigger, you've got that. So it's infinite turns, which turn into infinite 1/1, I guess, non-flying creatures. And then you can keep going and looping until you've drawn into what you need to kill them. Or if you have Alela out, you make infinite 1/1s that are flying. So you have a 1/1 flyer that comes into play on top of a 1/1 non-flyer. You keep sacrificing the artifacts to keep taking extra turns, and you keep repeating. I know I didn't explain that very well, but it should be, you can take a look at it and read the cards for yourself. So, sacrifice 5 artifacts, tap it, and take an extra turn. You have Thopter Assembly in play during your upkeep. It returns to your hand, you create 5/1/1s. So these 2 themselves create infinite turns. The Mirrored and Besiege is only so you can have an extra creature come into play. It's to help the combo. You don't need this to actually pull this off. You can have something else to go with it. But I wanted the Mirrored and Besiege so that I could actually get, another source of a way to kill somebody. So, that is the version of Alela that I built. There's a couple of things I'm going to change in it as I acquire other cards. Again, with what's going on in the world, it's not so easy to go ahead and just trade with people anymore. Hopefully that ends and we can get back to normal life, whatever the new normal may be. But that's what I have for you today. This is going to be one of my new favorite decks just because I really like Alela. I like what she does. Hopefully that gave you some ideas for how to build your Alela or gave you an idea to build an Alela deck. If not, I've got other decks coming down the pike. I have Morrow Gnawer almost done as well, so that'll be coming up soon. I wanted to make this today. It's Thursday, right before I release it on Friday, just because I gave you guys two unboxings in a row, and I really wanted to get Alela done. I was hoping to pull from the 3rd box exactly what I needed. I didn't. So this is what I've got for now. Later on, when I update things, I'll let you guys know when I've got my hands on the 3 black enchantments I was referring to. And then, we'll go from there. But for now, that's all I have for you on the Alela deck. I will ask you to do what I ask you to do every time. Like, share, subscribe. Those 3 things are really important to me. You guys were great. I got 105 subscribers, so I hit the mark I was looking to hit. I did name the channel, so it'll make it easier for me to put the links out there for everybody to go ahead and find my content. So I appreciate everybody. At some point in time in the near future, I might have a giveaway from one of the videos. I'll keep you posted when I decide what I'm going to do. And again, I ask you again, share this out to friends. Hopefully they'll subscribe. They'll like what they see. Like the video. I like it when you guys give me some positive feedback. Oh, and comment below in the comment section. Go to the Facebook page if you wanted to contact me directly. I can be, seen at Blue Bears Games on Facebook. Just look me up. You'll see my name everywhere if you Google me. Blue Bears Games is everywhere now. And that's about all I got. I want to tell you guys, stay safe, stay inside, try not to get sick. This is a very serious problem we're going through, and I'm hoping with my videos I'm giving you guys some entertainment value, something to watch while you're sitting at home if you're possibly bored. I'm hoping I'm doing what I can to help you guys out. It helps me out making the videos, so that's all I got for you guys today. Again, this is Blues Brews, Alela. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.